Imagine building a $50 billion empire, selling a dream of status and well-being in the form of a stationary bike, only to watch it all evaporate faster than your motivation to work out on a Monday morning. That, in a nutshell, is the story of Peloton. Just a few years ago, its name was synonymous with the elite of at-home fitness. Today, its stock has dropped more than 97% from its peak, and the company is struggling to prove it's not just a relic of the pandemic. It's a spectacular collapse, a masterclass in how arrogance and a poor reading of the market can destroy immense value. To understand this disaster, it's not enough to just look at the numbers on a spreadsheet. You have to dive into consumer psychology, the pitfalls of viral marketing, and the arrogance that comes from success that's too fast. Today we're going to break down the 5 key reasons that explain how Peloton went from being the undisputed king of connected fitness to a recurring meme on Wall Street. And believe me, the lessons from this story are far more valuable than any gym membership, because they teach us that sometimes, when you think you're on top of the world, you're actually just pedaling really fast toward a cliff. It all started with a brilliant idea, almost an archetype of the American dream. John Foley, a busy executive and family man, loved the energy of spinning classes, but hated the time he wasted going to and from the gym. His solution was simple and, in retrospect, brilliant. What if he could bring that boutique class experience with a charismatic instructor and blaring music directly into his home? That's how Peloton was born in 2012. They weren't selling just a simple stationary bike. They were selling convenience, community, and above all, status. The bike, with its sleek touchscreen and a starting price of over $2,000, wasn't just gym equipment. It was a piece of decor that screamed, "Thank you. I'm successful, and I'm also in shape." People weren't buying a bike, they were buying a ticket into an elite club. It was like a country club, but with better glutes and fewer awkward conversations about politics. By 2017, they already had 100,000 paying subscribers, and the company was valued at over $4 billion. The growth was organic, and their customer base, nicknamed the Philo people, were brand evangelists. They defended their purchase with an almost religious fervor. Peloton had created a niche product for a wealthy audience that valued their time and their image. And everything was, quite literally, running smoothly. Until the whole world came to a halt and, paradoxically, Peloton's business accelerated at an unsustainable speed. Then the pandemic hit. Overnight, gyms closed, the streets emptied, and we were all stuck at home with a sudden obsession for baking sourdough bread and trying not to lose our minds. For Peloton, this apocalyptic scenario was a blessing from above. Suddenly, their niche product became the perfect solution for millions of upper-middle-class people who couldn't go to their usual gym and had extra money they weren't spending on vacations or restaurants. Demand exploded. In the spring of 2020, revenue doubled. By summer, they had already surpassed 1,100,000 subscribers. People were so desperate for a bike that waitlists stretched from 8 to 10 weeks. Peloton couldn't manufacture them fast enough. And this is where the story takes a turn. The company's management looked at this tsunami of demand and made the most classic mistake in the business playbook. They confused an extraordinary and temporary event with a permanent change in consumer behavior. They believed that the post-pandemic world would be one where everyone wanted a luxury gym in their living room. It was like giving a child 5 liters of soda and thinking their energy level would be sustainable forever. The high was epic, but the crash was, quite simply, inevitable. With that invincible mindset, Peloton did what any company intoxicated by success would do. They started spending money as if they were printing it in the basement. Convinced that demand would keep growing forever, they embarked on a massive and delirious expansion. First, they bought the fitness equipment manufacturer Precor for $420 million to increase their production capacity. Then, as if that were not enough, they announced a $400 million investment to build their own mega factory in Ohio. John Foley himself even predicted that Peloton could have hundreds of millions of users worldwide. Meanwhile, in markets like Spain or Mexico, people were counting the days until they could return to the parks and to local gyms, longing for social interaction. But Peloton kept blindly betting that lockdown was the new global lifestyle. They built an infrastructure for a future that only existed in their PowerPoint presentations. It's the business equivalent of buying diapers for triplets when you're only expecting a cat. They were solving a short-term supply problem with permanent multi-million-dollar solutions without realizing that the demand they were trying to meet was a mirage about to disappear. But while they were building their castle in the air, the foundations in the real world were starting to crack, and marketing was the first to show the fissures. While the company was spending out of control, the brand image, that intangible asset that had made them so successful, began to crumble. First came the infamous 2019 holiday ad, where a husband gave his already thin wife a Peloton. The ad was perceived as sexist and dystopian, sparking a wave of ridicule. Then, in 2021, came the pop culture coup de grace. In the first episode of the Sex and the City sequel, the character Mr. Big suffers a fatal heart attack and dies right after finishing his 1000th class on a Peloton bike. It was the perfect anti-product placement. Your luxury fitness product was now directly associated with death on one of the most iconic TV series. And as if that weren't enough, reality hit even harder. The company had to recall 125,000 of its treadmills after multiple injuries were reported. And tragically, the death of a child. Suddenly, your $2,000 product was not only a bit cheesy and deadly for fictional characters, but also a real danger. For a luxury brand whose value is based on aspiration and safety, these blows were devastating. Competitors like Echelon and SoulCycle took the opportunity to launch cheaper alternatives, and Peloton, in a desperate and clumsy move, allowed its app and classes to be used on competitors' bikes for a fraction of the price, diluting the value of its exclusive ecosystem. With the brand wounded and warehouses full of unsold bikes, the party was over. It was time to call in an adult to clean up the mess. By early 2022, the collapse was undeniable, with demand plummeting. 120,000 bikes were gathering dust in warehouses, and the losses were astronomical. The board of directors finally took action. John Foley was removed as CEO. And in his place, they brought in Barry McCarthy, a veteran executive from Netflix and Spotify, with the mission of performing emergency surgery. McCarthy did what had to be done. He laid off thousands of employees, outsourced production, shut down the Ohio factory that never produced a single bike, and raised subscription prices. His strategy was clear. Peloton could no longer be a hardware company selling expensive bikes. It had to become a software and content company, like Netflix. The problem is that this transition is incredibly difficult. It's as if Ferrari suddenly stopped selling cars and started selling new car-scented air fresheners. You might make some money, but you've lost your soul and your identity in the process. Today Peloton survives, but it's a shadow of what it once was. It still has a loyal user base, but the magic, the status, and the sense of exclusivity have evaporated. They're trying to be a fitness app for everyone, competing in a saturated market while dragging along the heavy legacy of being a company that sells luxury hardware that is no longer so luxurious. And this brings us to the present, with a $50 billion question. In the end, Peloton wasn't wrong to create a great product for a specific niche. Their fatal mistake was believing their own hype during the pandemic frenzy. They saw themselves as the inevitable future of fitness, for all of humanity, when in reality they were a temporary luxury solution to a global crisis. Their story is a warning for any company that experiences explosive growth. Never mistake a stroke of luck for strategic genius. But now I ask you, do you think Peloton can recover and reinvent itself as a software brand? Or were you one of those who bought the bike in 2020 and now uses it as the most expensive and stylish clothes rack in history? Leave your answers in the comments. Now you have to watch my video about the spectacular downfall of CrossFit. I promise that after watching it, you'll never look at a CEO the same way again.